let's go ahead and talk about what everyone's really worried about right now. And what is that? Well, it's the real estate market. What's up, guys? My name is McKeown. I'm a licensed real estate agent and investor in the Dallas-Fort Worth market of Texas, as well as the Orlando, Florida market. If you by chance didn't hear about the inflation news earlier this week, it's the first sign probably in the last couple months regarding the real estate market. Now, if you've been following the real estate market, you have seen that interest rates really haven't been going down. Now, we don't know the full effect of where inflation is at now, which is currently at 3%, down from 4% just last month, and the lowest it's been since March of 2021. But what I can tell you is it's pretty clear, cut, and dry. The lower the inflation is, the lower the mortgage rates will be. So you may have seen a slight dip in interest rates this week due to the good news from inflation, but one of the biggest sticking points with inflation, and the reason why we haven't gone all the way back down to 2 or less than 2% in regards to inflation, is housing costs. Now, what I'm going to do is break down the reason why home prices haven't come down, which is a big reason why inflation hasn't come down, which in turn is the reason why rates haven't come down as well. Now, what I'm going to break down for you guys is what a lot of people are calling the lock-in effect. Now, if you were fortunate enough to buy in 2020 or 2021, we're talking primary residence or any investment property. Those are properties that you certainly aren't going to be selling or refinancing or looking to purchase kind of another property because you've grown out of that property, mainly because interest rates were so incredibly low at that time. And interest rates now are substantially higher. We're talking almost 3x what you could have potentially bought something in 2020 for than if you bought something today. Now, I'll give you a rough example here for myself. I bought this primary residence that I'm filming this video in just as we speak at the end of 2020, October 2020 to be exact. Now, rates were incredibly low. Now, at the time, I knew that I could afford a 15-year note over a 30-year note simply because I got a 1.875% interest rate. Now, it was going to be probably low twos if I went the 30-year fixed. But again, the whole design with this property itself was to be able to build an Airbnb suite into it to generate income and to have a roommate. And with the two of those incomes combined, I really wasn't even going to have a mortgage payment, even with a 15-year note. Now, if we fast forward almost 3 years since the date that I purchased this house, you're talking well above 6% if I want a 15-year mortgage, and needless to say, it would be far more difficult to qualify, as well as far more difficult to, at the end of the day, pay my mortgage on a property such as this. And on top of that, I technically contracted this build at the beginning of 2020. We're talking January of 2020, well before the home prices just absolutely took off, specifically in the state of Texas. And now that $620,000 purchase that I have, and I have it locked in for technically the next 27 years at 1.875, is now if you were to purchase this house and I put it on the market, you'd be looking at between 6 and 7% for an interest rate. And it's no longer $620 to purchase this. It's now close to $900,000. And just to give you guys some quick numbers, my mortgage is in kind of the mid 3,000s on a monthly rate. Now, I no longer have a roommate, but I still use the Airbnb to pay a majority, probably 2/3 of that total monthly mortgage payment just by renting out that Airbnb. Now, on the other side of things, if I were to purchase this property today, rather than purchasing it back in 2020, I no longer could get that 1.875% interest rate. Obviously, I'd be probably looking at the 6.5% for a 15-year note. And on top of that, I would no longer be paying $620, $630. I'd be paying $900,000. So for a house that's gone up a third in value to about $900,000, interest rates that have almost tripled to 6.5%, and using a 15-year note, no longer am I looking for a mortgage in the mid 3,000s. I'm looking at a mortgage north of $7,000. Yes, my mortgage has more than doubled if I bought this house today versus buying in 2020. So that's what we call the lock-in effect, meaning individuals like Casey, myself, there's no way in hell that I'm going to be selling this property to go buy something else because I'm going to be losing that great interest rate that I got. Yeah, sure, I have a ton of equity in this house. I could technically, if I wanted to, go take out a HELOC, but there's no point because there's nothing else that makes sense to be able to take a 7 or 8% interest rate on a HELOC and then go take out an additional 7 or 8% interest loan on an investment property and assume that I'm going to be able to recoup all of that interest that I'm paying both on my investment property and my HELOC. So needless to say, the lock-in effect basically means that you're locked in. You're not going to sell. You're not going to buy. Now, the only reason why it would make sense for you to sell or to buy is life. For instance, if you're moving or relocating and you're not an investor yourself, yes, you're going to sell your house, use the proceeds, go purchase a house in the new market or new city, state, country that you may live in. Now, it also may make sense for you if in 2020 you were a single guy. Now, if in 2023 you've been a little busy and now you're married with 2 kids, then yes, the small house that you have is not going to probably be suitable and you're going to be forced to have to sell and purchase the next property. Now, the good sign here is if you did purchase early on, you likely have some equity, and that equity will certainly help be able to bring down the mortgage payment for your new house, but that new house is still going to have a 6, 7, or maybe 8% interest rate, which is far worse than anything anyone bought in 2020 or 21. Now, to add into the lock-in effect, there are a ton of people dealing with the very same situation that I'm in. And on top of that, I also have a handful of rental properties that I purchased in 2019, 2020, and 2021 that I sure as heck am not going to be selling. Now, if you look at the grand scheme of things, there are a ton of people that purchased in 2020 as well as 21. But on top of that, there is likely a large amount of people that refinance the current house that they're in order to get their rate down from what it was prior. So those individuals that either purchased or even refinanced, they're going to be in the very same situation I'm in, which means they're not going to sell unless they absolutely have to. Now, what does this mean if they don't want to sell? Now, there's going to be a lot less buyers because they aren't selling and having to move to the next house, but it also means that the inventory across the country is going to be lacking severely. If you don't have people selling homes, then obviously you're going to lack a substantial amount of inventory for those buyers that do want to buy homes to be able to obtain those homes that essentially people are no longer selling. So at the end of the day, guys, something has to give here when we're talking about the lock-in effect. Now, I can tell you a majority of those folks that aren't going to sell, now, they'd be probably a little more interested to sell if they knew that they could purchase another home with a comparable interest rate. Now, we got good inflation news at the beginning of this week. Now, it's a monthly announcement, and for quite some time, we've seen a substantial fall off from what our record high inflation rate was just last summer in 2022. But we don't know if it's going to continue to fall or if it's going to plateau or where truly inflation is going to reside in the near future. Now, what I can tell you is if inflation continues to go down, the rates continue to stay high and make housing a little unaffordable for most people, you're going to see housing prices start to come down as well. Now, if housing prices continue to go down because rates are no longer going down, that's going to further decrease the inflation. Now, if you further decrease inflation, then rates have to come down. But again, then we could be right back where we were in 2020 or 2021, which, just a side comment here, I don't think we're going to be seeing 3s or 4% interest rates. But if you do see yourself back down to the 5s or 6s, maybe low 6s, you're going to see a lot more buyers out purchasing homes because of the significant amount of difference. Again, using my situation with this primary house, it's no longer double the price for my house because housing prices have come down. Interest rates have come down, which make jumping from one house to the next house a little bit more affordable. Now, you may be watching this video because you are that individual that was, maybe not fortunate enough to buy in 2020 or 2021. Now it's 2023 and you can afford to buy a house, but you're questioning whether or not you should or shouldn't be due to the high interest rates. Now, what I can tell you is the total interest rate on renting is 100%, meaning that you're not building any equity, you're not paying down any debt of your own, you're paying someone else's debt. Now, if you want to do that, reach out to me. I've got a ton of rental properties that you can pay down for me. But all jokes aside, if you do want to purchase a house, you just got to be a little bit smarter now than you were just a couple years ago. Now, as I mentioned before, there is going to be life situations that make absolute sense for you to have to sell and to purchase. And as well, if you are an individual that is renting, it still makes a lot of sense to be able to purchase. Just got to be a little bit smarter about it. Maybe rent out the rooms, buy a duplex and rent out the other side. Just be a little bit more smart about your first home purchase, because that first home purchase, and I can say that because I'm dealing with a situation right now, make sure it's a smart decision. And if it's not, and if you're not working with an agent that actually knows how to invest, actually invests themselves and has knowledge and experience in doing so, make sure you do your due diligence, get with a good agent, and make sure that first purchase that you do make is the one that's not going to affect your future in the long run. But truly, it's just like the video that I filmed just a couple weeks ago, mentioning that I am no longer going to be buying investment properties in 2023, maybe even 2024 if rates don't go down far enough. And the main reason why is because I would prefer to stack cash and be able to use that cash in the future when rates do come down and home prices do come down. But there are going to be situations where it makes sense to do so. And if it does make sense to do so, just do so wisely. I know this was kind of short and sweet, guys, but I appreciate you guys watching the entire video. I'm going to have a ton of content here for you soon, so make sure to like and subscribe. It really does help. And stay tuned for the next video.